Good morning, Shauna, and good morning, everyone else. This is Rob here in the back of my studio. And Shauna, you sent me a file and you had some questions. I'm going to address those questions right now in the best of my ability. Now, it does bring in other questions and other issues and other areas that I think are worthy of looking into. So your question was why the faces were not as sharp, and I asked you for clarification. Sharp because there was some confusion about whether or not you were talking about exposure or sharpness, and then you clarified it was about exposure. You wanted to know why the faces were, I guess, more blown out versus the rest of the image. So I'm going to get to that, and I want to talk about some other stuff. So I'm going to get a little bit technical here, but I think this is important stuff because as a photographer, this is an area, a technical area that, I think it's important to at least have a good, deep understanding on. If you don't, and it's well, let me put it this way: if you're too technical, it doesn't mean you're going to be a good photographer. So I don't want to push people in that direction too hard because I meet people who are very technically savvy and they're like they know so much information, like a bajillion times more than I do, but their photography suffers. So you can push us too far. But I think again, it's important. It's like an artist who works with oils, who understands palettes, the different mixtures and tones. It really boils down to tones and contrast. So anyways, there's your image on the screen, and the first thing I want to point out is the exposure is fine. So I don't know what the problem is in that respect. So I don't think there's an issue. Now, let's talk about capturing exposure, and then let's talk about shooting for the workflow and the actual workflow, and that's where I'm going to get a little bit technical. I think you had mentioned you shot this aperture priority. Typically, when I go outside in a scene like this, I go on manual, okay? And that's sort of where it's important to understand how to capture good exposure and understand how to capture a good range of tones from shadows all the way to highlights. Now, a lot of people shoot raw, and they don't worry about it so much because you can capture the tones later when you process the raw image, which is fine. If it works for you, that's fine. I personally never shoot raw because I just shoot too much stuff. So I created a workflow based on the fact that I had to get stuff in and out quick, and I had to get good results. When you capture good image in JPEG and you capture good image in RAW, there's no way in a million years you can see the difference ultimately when you print it on a inkjet printer or a laserjet printer from the lab, yada, yada, yada. There is no difference. You can scientifically and mathematically show how through the numbers there is more data. And yeah, there is more data. But ultimately, it's the end result that matters, and the human eye can only see so many tones. So that's sort of part of the technical and theoretical side of image capture, and one of the reasons why I shoot JPEG. Mostly I shoot because it saves me time. However, it's important to understand that when you're shooting JPEGs, you must capture a fairly accurate rendition in camera at the time of exposure. Now, a scene like this, you've got white faces, a dark couch, sort of a dark foliage background. You got the sky and a bit of that house over there, and you've got they're wearing predominantly dark clothes. Two kids on the left are dark, grandma's dark, and the other three are sort of mid to dark, which if I were shooting this on aperture priority going into this scene, I would know right away the camera wants to overexpose it if it's on aperture priority because it sees only darkness for the most part. So that's one of the reasons why when I'm outside like this, I shoot manual, because I don't want the camera making those decisions. I want to make the decision. So you have to be able to interpret a scene, unless you're shooting raw and you're just going to get lazy and let the raw do the work for you later, which is, I guess, okay. But I like to get really good capture at time up. It's not that hard to do. It stumps a lot of photographers, especially newbies, who have a hard time because they struggle with it. But discipline and application, you get there. It's no different than a musician learning how to learn a new technique on the guitar, piano, trumpet, whatever your music's all about. So I hope I kind of didn't lose you here on all this. So I would shoot this on manual, and I'm going to show you some images, and I'm going to get a little more technical in a second here. Actually, let me do that right now. Let's check out the levels here. So in digital photography, you got 255 tones from 0, which is pure black, all the way to 255, okay? I think most people understand that. If you go into your, this thing here, this palette here, the color picker, you see the numbers on the right here, RGB. You got 0, which is pure black, okay, a little bit of detail in the shadows, blah, 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 and then all the way up to 255, which is pure white. Generally Caucasian skin tone, which is what we're dealing with here. You can see right here. See the info palette right here? I'm going to bring this in, okay? Oh, it's gone! No, I hate it when that happens. There's the info palette. Watch, I'm going to lose it again. I knew it. I knew it. So Grandma, look at the numbers right here. RGB. Grandma is 237, 223-ish. I'm not looking at color balance, by the way. I'm just going to analyze exposure. Color balance is another video. I mean, your color balance appears to be okay. By the way, I don't know if this image is right off camera or if you processed it. It looks like it's been processed because the contrast seems to be up. And maybe it's just the setting in the camera. You've set it to standard and or vibrant, which will do a lot of work for you in camera. So the images come off the camera, which matters more if you're shooting JPEG. But I'll show you one of my images. I grabbed one. I'm going to show you in a minute here. If you look at this little boy, 230. This little girl here, 225, 228. So that's the rough range we're dealing with here. F8, there's a shortcut here. I should just use that shortcut. That little baby looks a little brightish, 247, which means, you know, 220. So, well, on the baby's bright side, it's getting up there. To me, 240 is a little high for skin tone, but overall, you know, I don't think it's not overexposed. That's for sure. So you haven't overexposed it. Okay, it's probably at the very limit. If you'd have gone a little more, it might have. So again, there's really no problem with the image in that respect. So unless there's something that you didn't explain to me that I'm kind of missing here. I'm going to explain a little more and show you some of my images. Actually, I'm going to show you one image. This is from last week. There's my histogram. I like to push my exposure to the wall where I get the tones all the way to the higher end, so closer to 255. I would have shot this on manual, 70 to 200, at 200, probably at about f4-ish at ISO 100 on a tripod with a cable release. This is an easy shoot to do because they're all older kids, and you know, we got, I don't know, man, I look at this and I think this has got to be one of the toughest shoots to do. See the contrast? I don't know if you worked on this image again or if that's the way it came off the camera. My guess is you did some work to it, so it would have been nice to see the image, if that's the case, right off the camera like this one. Now, you look at this image, it looks very flat, and the reason it looks flat is because in my camera setting, I set it to neutral. Canon does the same settings. There's standard, neutral, and vivid. I think vivid in Canon. In Nikon it's called vivid. I'm pretty sure. Whatever. These are settings, portrait settings, that the camera will apply to the images as you shoot them. Okay? And again, I don't think it matters if you're shooting RAW, but again, I shoot JPEG. So I want the image to come off a certain way. I used to set my camera standard so that the images would come off the camera with some contrast and saturation. I did that for consistency because our employee, I didn't want her doing those things, so I let the camera do them. But we no longer use her, so we've gone to a different system, and I've gone back to my old school technique, which is this: back to neutral, no sharpening, no contrast, no saturation. The image looks dead. I like that. This is, to me, is called a JPEG RAW. Okay, so there's no processing in camera done to this. Okay, so I've got a good exposure. a good range. The way I like to shoot it, we're kind of pushing the shadows all the way over here. So you might even say it's a little bit overexposed. But I don't mind that. I don't mind that because I'm shooting portraiture. Now, you'll notice this here is overexposed. That's because of this little pocket of light hitting the girl here. Okay, there might be some whiter detail here. Let me try something here. Whoops. I want to go here. Hold on. I was trying to hit F8, but it actually fired an action here. Right there. Yeah, see, that's pretty high. 254. Well, somewhere in there, it's gone right to the wall. There's 255, you see. So there's a little bit of detail. Some of the pixels have gone over. But you got an image like this, it's sort of a specular highlight. The highlights creating that effect where it's coming in from behind or the side, and it's creating this almost like a kicker light. I left it there, and I kind of liked it, but I took it out later, and I'll show you. Here is the final image. Okay, big difference, right? So the contrast, I did a lot of burning, I did some retouching, some softening, and I didn't do any white balance adjustment because I do a custom white balance at the time of my shoots outside. So, and I cloned out the specular in her hair. So the tones, let's look at the. Okay, probably we're looking at 200, probably less than, there's 227. I'm looking at the reds here. So around the 200 to 215-ish mark. Dad's a little bit darker. I'm looking at the info here down in the bottom. You can see it moving on the RGB. 223. So we got like 229. I'm looking at, I'm calling out the red, so it's actually a combination of red, green, and blue. Typically in portraiture, there's more red, which is normal. It means it's a little warmer. So, but anyways, yeah, you can see the numbers. It's very much in the same range-ish as what your image was when I analyzed these here. So, and let's look at another image I shot of the same gang, and you can see the skin tones are popping right out. It's very snappy, very contrasty. Okay, we got actually a little more snappiness in this image, and I would have done that in Photoshop to actually pop it out a little more versus what I did for this one, because this is more classic, this is more funkier. I just kind of wanted to reflect where I was going with the pose as well. So anyways, I hope that helps, and I hope that helps explain a little bit as to capturing exposure, how I capture mine. And it gets a little controversial because so many people shoot RAW and so many people do not agree with what I'm saying. There are a lot of photographers who shoot JPEG, and we just kind of keep to ourselves, you know. Again, I do it because I've got a really good system down, and I like to save time and I like to save space. You know, the D800 shoots such big files. They're massive. So, and if you said to me, well, we got a solution for that, and it was a pretty good solution, I still would not want to shoot RAW because there's no real benefit for me. It doesn't matter how complex or how cool and or mathematically and theoretically accurate your operation system is, and I include workflow in operation system, if ultimately it's giving you the same results. So, you know, I'm off on a tangent now, so I'm going to shut up. Yeah, hopefully I clarified that. If there's any questions at all, let me know. This is a tough shoot, by the way. You got this little kid here who looks to be about 1.5 years. She's about 2.5, and a little baby. It's like, oh, this is not an easy shoot to do. If I were shooting this, I would have liked, just to get off topic a bit, I would have liked to have shot it with a longer lens. Maybe not at 200 because of the distance. I would have tried it, and if I couldn't gotten away with it, I would have tried it at about 100. Squeaky toys and rubber balls work really well to kind of get their attention. So you get the little guy to sit still for a minute, and you can get everybody looking at you. But, you know, kudos to you for actually, this is a tough shoot. This is a really tough shoot to capture that. 3-generation thingy with the little kids. It's like not easy. All right. Did I answer your question? Or did I go too far? Thank you. Take care.